Alright, here's a bit of a grail look. Grande Guerre, 14 to 18. This is an As You Wish Enterprise game. One of the later games that they did, actually. I think this came out in '99. Most of their other games were kind of mid to late '90s. They might have had some stuff in the early aughts. The other ones that I have are Europa Universalis, La Révolution Française, and Russia 1917. This one was firmly in unobtainable land as far as I was concerned. Copies of it go on Noble Knight, and I don't know if these are even near mint or just fair copies, but certainly used copies are listed on Noble Knight for $550 for this game, which obviously is an absurd amount. Nobody would ever pay that unless they're independently wealthy to acquire a board game. Something like Case Blue or some of the other meme-worthy Grail games out there could fetch between $250 and $300. Probably not over $300. I think the Devil's Cauldron of the MMP's Grand Tactical series on Market Garden, the first game in that series, I think that one would routinely fetch $300 or more, possibly as high as $400. But that's the upper stratospheric end of what Grail war games would typically go for. In terms of my own Grail collection, Art of Siege, which I did an unboxing for once already, is probably the most expensive used Grail game that I've ever paid or ever bought, and that was for like $110. So the rest of these older games, Great Medieval Battles, Empires of the Middle Ages, all can be found for under $100 if you exercise a little patience looking around eBay. In terms of new games, the most expensive I've ever paid would be for Atlantic Wall, and that was in the range of $220 maybe, or $200 in the $200 range for a new game. So I've paid much more for new games, something like Empire of the Sun, or not Empire of the Sun, War of the Suns. I don't currently have sitting here because it's at the club, but Last Chance for Victory, the Gamers Gettysburg Monster, that was I think $125 or so. So the new monsters have cost me much more. I don't think I've got any others. Some of the Musket and Pike games, all under $100. There's nothing that I've paid for used that I paid over $100 for until I bought Art of Siege. So you can find the good old monster Grail games out there for under $100. Again, if you just a little patience, a little persistence on eBay, and these things can be found fairly inexpensively. But frankly, even the AWE titles, which are often the most inflated, just because they're French, they're hard to come by. Not a lot of these were printed. Some of these old SPI era monsters, there's probably 10,000 copies of these games printed and floating around out there, which means they're not going to be as expensive now. Whereas, some of the AWE games probably had maybe a couple thousand copies at most floating around. So these are going to be pretty expensive. I think La Révolution Française lists on Noble Knight for $350. Again, that's a pretty ludicrous price. It's a game that could be, it's not easily found, but could be found probably for at least less than half that price. My copy I got lucky and found on a Consum World listing for $75. So these things, despite how unobtainable they may seem at the very moment you're looking for them, over a course of time, they are obtainable. But this one, I just didn't envision any way that I'd ever find this game for anything less than $200. It's not widely available amongst the AWE games. You can usually find Europa Universalis fairly easily for fairly low price. Russia, 1917. Maybe not La Révolution Française, but something like Hispania. Those type more commonly known AWE games are usually found pretty easily. Le Grande Guerre, not so much. Every time I saw it outside of a Noble Knight listing, it was always at least $200, probably I think $250 may have been the lowest I'd ever seen it for. So I just written it off that, hey, it'd be cool if I could ever get lucky enough to stumble across a copy of this. And there was, find my copy on my desk here, there was a PC version of this done because Philippe Thibault, the designer, I don't think he was the owner of AWE. I think there was a guy named Bruno Scorile. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he may have been the actual founder / publisher / owner of AWE. But Philippe Thibault was one of their key designers, and Philippe went on to found Ajad. Again, don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, but Ajad is a PC game, strategy game company that did the initial computerized versions of Europa Universalis and a number of other Civil War related strategic games. I want to say they did the Rise of Nations game too, but a lot of sort of real-time and turn-based strategy games for the PC. So after his stint with AWE, Philippe Thibault went on to found Ajad and design all these PC strategy games. So he designed Europa Universalis. I don't think he did La Révolution Française or Russia, but he did EU and La Grande Guerre. So hence, when he did Ajad, he did World War I, and it's even got La Grande Guerre on there. A PC version of the board game. And this was designed, developed by Ajad, distributed by Matrix Games. So I picked it up on sale during one of Matrix Games' sale events. But for La Grande Guerre, same. I wasn't sure I'd ever get a copy of this. I had just kind of written it off. That's why I got the PC game, because I thought, well, Callendale's talked about how it's one of his favorite World War I games. So I thought, well, I can get the PC game and see what see how the system works, see how the game actually plays, even though I may never get the board game version. But as it turns out, apparently the publisher, Bruno, of AWE, had a lot of copies of some of the AWE games sitting around. The company no longer publishes games. I don't know if it still exists as a legal entity or not. Hasn't published anything for a number of years. I think at least 10 years, maybe 2005. There was a handful of Napoleonic era tactical games that were released under the AWE banner, and I don't know if that was 2005 or not. But regardless, he apparently had a lot of copies of these games. In particular, they had copies of Europa Universalis, Grand Siècle, La Grande Guerre, and Hispania. I think those were the four titles that they had extra copies of. And so this guy, Edmund Rule, I think, again, French name, probably mangling it terribly, but he posted on Board Game Geek and said, hey, there's an AWE, we've got some AWE games available for sale, please contact me if you're interested. There was some suspicion at first, but then Callendale and a number of other guys on the Gamebox website forum verified that this is legit. This guy's telling the truth. These games are available, not some kind of scam or anything. So I contacted him and said, yeah, I'd be interested in La Grande Guerre, because they had listed it for 125 euros, which once I added shipping in, I think shipping was about $20, 17 or $20. Once I calculated shipping in, got the whole thing, got the game plus shipping for $160 US, which is an absolute steal for what this game goes for in the secondary market. And this would be for a minty, unpunched copy of the game. So, initially I had just bought, when this deal came out, I had just bought Art of Siege and thought, shit, I just spent $110 and I can't drop another 160 right away, or my wife would kill me. But as it turns out, there was an initial run or initial availability of these, and then he posted another post saying, "Hey, we've got more of them that'll be available in March," which worked out great because I was another whole month away, and then I could be my monthly expenditure for the month, $160. So, a little breathing room between giant Grail game expenditures. So jumped on the deal. Bought the game. A couple weeks later, shows up in the mail. So, smooth transaction. Finally puts a true Grail game in my hands. So the game box, the same as your other typical AWE size and construction boxes, although this one has a black border instead of the typical blue border for AWE. I'm not sure why that is, but again, the cover, similar to other AW games, you get the collage of topic-appropriate photographs and then the title of the game. And, not to rag on AWE too much, but again, fairly amateurish in terms of font and graphics and things like that, even for 1999. But it does have a unique look. You can always tell a AWE look on their covers. And just as an example, you can see how similar these are. La Révolution Française, again, collage, kind of clashy graphics. The title gets lost in the detail of the pictures behind the title. Kind of a no-no in graphic design. Same thing for Europa Universalis. You don't want your colors and details in whatever background you're using to completely obliterate the legibility of your title. Russia, not quite as bad. But again, very kind of washed out, faded out colors on there. And some of it's just, box age, wear on the boxes. But, there's AWE games had that distinctly amateurish looking graphic design to them. But again, kind of endearing in a way, because they made such unique and interesting games on such unique and interesting topics. You tend to forgive them for the graphic design, and in the end, the graphic design itself, amateurish as it is, comes across as part of the whole package, the whole experience of the game. So, anyway, let's take a look in the box for the Grande Guerre. And this thing, when I got it, the maps don't really fit in there. They're kind of wedged in there like that. So this thing is to the brim. I'll probably end up storing the counters outside of the box, which I hate doing, but I don't think there's going to be any way to avoid it in this instance, because there are a lot of counter sheets for this. I think there's 7. Colors are decent, at least, though. Looks like you've got your French and your Russian troops here. More. It's upside down. Counter sheet 2. There you've got Russian and German troops. More Germans, some French in there, and again, these counters much more. And I'll talk about this with the map too. But these counters are infinitely more legible in terms of the pictures on them and things. than the Europa Universalis counters, which are just darn near so badly pixelated, so clearly from a computer graphics source, that the counters are almost just completely illegible. But these are very, very fine-looking counters in terms of the imagery on them. Nothing came out horribly pixelated or difficult to read, so a vast improvement between 94 and 99 when these came out. So there's your Austro-Hungarian troops in a typical white counter colors. England here, blue. A lot of times you'll see England represented as tan or khaki counters in a World War I game. Turkey here, kind of a cream color. Let's see. It's an unusual color for Turkey. Usually they would be yellow or possibly khaki themselves in most World War I games that I've seen. Counter sheet number 5 looks like more British troops. And I'm not sure. The green, that might be Romania or Italy. Might be Italy. And then more counters here. I'm not sure. Most of these were organized by country, but they seem to be repeating themselves. Yeah, the green was Italy. England, France, and then lots of markers here. So, and that's seven counter sheets. So that's a lot of counters. I usually store them in baggies. But again, I'm not sure how it's going to fit into this box, which is stacked pretty deep. You take all the counter sheets out, you've got about that much room in there to work with. May not be enough for all the stuff I'll have. So here are some photocopied sheets, and I'm not sure what these are even for, since it's all in French. I'll explain in the rules, but whatever it is, there's a bunch of them that have been photocopied for frequent use now. As minty fresh as the game is, you can tell there's some kind of age to it because you can see the staple there, a little bit corroded and rusty. So either they were stored in a damp environment or something, but they are in really good shape. So here's your basic rules booklet. It says second edition on there. I'm not sure when the first edition came out. This says 2002 on it. So I'm guessing, and I never knew this, so there must be versions that were from 1999 floating around out there. That must be the first edition. I don't know what the changes are between first and second edition, but these are all copyrighted 2002. So, but you've got basic rules booklet. And again, and these are all A4 size, so if you want to make photocopies of this stuff, you'll end up shrinking it down a little bit, unless you get some A4 paper for your printer. So basic rules pages, that's 31 pages, but there's like some notes and stuff like that in there. So you get your basic rules, then you've got a whole book just for trench rules, and some charts and tables on the back, various. Sure. So basic rules, trench rules, advanced rules, and there's your third booklet. Got more charts and tables on the back. Your unit breakdown, funnily enough, usually something that's on the first page of the initial rules. So there's 42 pages of advanced rules. That's the third booklet, so I'm not sure how the trench rules fit in between the basic and advanced rules. I haven't read any of these yet. So, and then there's your scenarios booklet, which as expected will be pretty big, 40 pages looks like. So that'll have all your different setup type stuff. That would be the fourth booklet. Those are all the actual booklets. Then you've got Entering into War, August 1914. And so this, I think, must be the progress of the game before the game starts, because you may have variable events and things that will affect who comes into the war, how the war starts, and so forth. Then you've got another little booklet of events, and then charts and tables here, and this looks much more poorly quality photocopied than the printed booklets and so forth. So not entirely sure, and it looks like 1914. So it looks like these are stapled together, but if you pop the staple out, I think what you'll have is two fold-over charts. So each side could have one of these if you pop those staples out. It's essentially just two charts. And then each country has booklets, has its own booklets with its own horrifyingly complicated looking tables. And in this one here, you can see there's a little hitch in the photocopy that may potentially make some of this illegible. Hopefully not too badly. But one thing I noticed on these is that I'll probably have to separate these somehow, because they've put England and France in the same book. And you can see flipped from each other. So I don't know if what I want to do is cut these in half and then create two separate books. The problem is I lose the fold over, so I'd almost have to put a little report slide to hold the pieces together on one side. Not sure exactly how that's going to work. Here, at least, for Russia, the Russia book and Italy book, at least they're both facing the same way. So they're not inverted from each other. So that at least is a welcome difference. And there's the United States in there too, Italy. So again, I'm not sure what the reasoning for the grouping together of the countries like that is, but because for Turkey, and you've got inverted Austria-Hungary on the other side. And again, charts, tables, things specific to that particular country. But then I'm going to flip it over to the Austria-Hungary side. So, I don't know, very unusual. But Germany gets its own book. So, yeah, at least I've got that going for whoever plays Germany. I don't have to make any any kind of weird accommodation to figure out how to make the Germany book work. And I can get the next book out of the bottom of the box here. And then there's a diplomacy booklet. Which covers all your kind of diplomatic modifiers and so forth between your major powers and your minor powers. So diplomacy chart. And then there are a lot of charts and tables here. You've got, for different years, your army, essentially army boxes for all these. So you can see these are all the German army tables, and single-sided, but some are double-sided, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. So I don't know if I'll have to end up photocopying onto cardstock so I can get two face-up sides on this, because here you've got the Italian 1st through 4th armies, Again, 1st through 4th armies there, but here for the Alamein, for the German armies, the Western, you've got armies 1 through 4, 5, 6, 7, and 13. But on this side, you've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 16. So I don't know. I don't know how they're supposed to be. And then here you've got the Eastern armies, same thing. You've got them flipped on both sides of the card, so I'm not sure how that's intended to play out. Here you've got Turkey, Austria, and again Austria on the back, so it doesn't seem like these. And then Serbia, Greece, Romania, and Bulgaria, again, doesn't seem like they should be on reverse sides of each other. Same thing here. Italy, United States, Turkey, United States. I guess that's if Turkey becomes an ally. Could happen. Russia, there, only single-sided. That makes sense. And you've got France and England, also only single-sided. So, and then there was an errata sheet in here from 1999. It's in French, so it's not exactly helpful. So there you've got it. You've got. It's going to take a lot of space with this many charts in the game, that many tables. A lot of paper. You can see when this is all laid out here, just how much paper is involved. So I do look forward to playing it eventually. Who knows, I may end up playing the computer game first, and then see if that makes it easier to figure out the board game. May make it more difficult. We'll have to see. It all just barely fits together. But I was happy with how nice and really new it is. I mean, the box is gorgeous. No shelfware or anything like that at all. So I'll lay the maps out here in a second, and we can take a look at those. So here's the map layout for La Grande Guerre. And I think La Grande Guerre came out in 1999 or thereabouts. So right away, looking at the map, which is fairly huge, I've got 2 of my modular tables set up here, and you can see it overlaps the end of one of those. So when I do get around to actually playing this, and I've got my other tables are otherwise occupied with Alexander, the new Alexander setup from GMT. That was the Great Battles of Alexander reprint, extended deluxe edition, or whatever it is. That particular scenario is one from Diadochoi or Diadochoi, however you pronounce it, one of the modules from Alexander the Great. So I'll have to, and that spilled over into 2 tables. Usually those only take up 1, but that's got an extended map on it, so I had to use 2 tables for that. So when I eventually get around to playing La Grande Guerre, it's going to have to take 3 tables. Actually, it'll probably take all 4 tables, because in addition to 3, just to hold the map, there are all the charts. So that will most likely result in taking all the table space that I have, or possibly having to set it up at the club, which I would do if I could get other people to play. But these AWE games are tough to get a group together until I've played them solo. So that's will ultimately determine whether this will be a potential group attempt game. Something like Europa Universalis, I might be able to convince my Empires in Arms group to play it on the basis that it is similar to Empires in Arms in a lot of ways. By design, that was one of the games that the designer wanted to emulate. But that is one where it's eminently playable, but very difficult for me to solo, just because of all the bookkeeping. I can do all that bookkeeping for 1 great power, 2 great powers, 3 great powers, possibly. 3 would be about my max, I think. Trying to do it for 6 great powers, it made it into too much work for me to do just to get from one turn to the next. And so that ordinarily the kind of thing that keeps me going through games is I want to see what happens next, and that's what gets me through the tedious parts of some games. Here, the desire to see what happened next could not outweigh the sheer amount of work that keeping the records for 6 of the great powers in the game did to me solo. So hopefully Le Grande Guerre doesn't have that level of bookkeeping to it. But as I was saying before I went way off track, this map, when it came out in 1999, was significantly improved over previous AWE maps, most of which were usually very heavily pixelated when you zoomed in on them. And this one, while it is pixelated, and I'll try and not blow this out, I'm not sure how visible the pixels are, but you can see a little jagged edge pixelation along the coastlines and country names and things like that. But compared to the Europa Universalis map, which is probably, of all the AWE games that I have, and I only got a couple of them, La Révolution Française and Russia 1917 both have some pixelation, but not terrible, whereas the Europa Universalis map, and the counters too, just everything is clearly generated off a computer, pixelated, and almost illegible in many cases. Not so with Le Grande Guerre. So that's good. It makes for a much more legible, playable map, and there's a lot more detailed charts. You've got the rest of the world map here, and this kind of thing would have been almost completely, had they tried to do something like this on the EU map, with the way the EU map looked, it would have just been almost completely illegible. So, but here, you've got mountains and deserts and textures and all kinds of things covered there that are actually legible without being pixelated all to hell. So this, in terms of legibility, much improved over earlier AWE titles. On this track up here, and I don't really know anything about the rules of Le Grande Guerre, but the Parlement track here is very reminiscent of the kind of track that they had in La Révolution Française for the French Parliament. So I don't think it was Parliament, but whatever, the track determining where the different government factions sat in the government assembly, turn track and stuff there and so forth. So as you can see overall, though, it's a very unique layout for a World War I map, because you've got Turkey here, which, looking at it this way, Turkey going that sort of east to west positioning is typical for how we envision Turkey on a map. But you can see then how the North African coast and the Palestine and Syria curve around here very oddly, the same way that Greece curves very oddly into Turkey. So looking at the layout of the map, you move from Turkey to Greece to Italy in a very unusual way compared to how we're used to looking at these flat maps. And I can't recall, I think there's a particular name for this type of projection of a map. I just don't know what it is. But you can see you go from Italy up to England there, and again, all tilted kind of at this weird angle. And you've got France, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Switzerland, all in the kind of weird, this layout of this map. It's almost like, in a typical north-south projection, it feels like Germany is appropriately east, but becomes kind of southeast of France. And then Hungary, Italy, it has this weird kind of bend to it that's just very kind of jarring when you look at it for the first time. So it was one of those things that would take some getting used to. And I know the PC game, the first version of the PC iteration of this, had this projection type map, and for the second edition, the gold edition, they redid the map to a more traditional layout of Europe, because I think people found it very confusing and disorienting, the way they had laid it out, similar to the board game map. So regardless, I think it's one of the better AWE maps that I've seen. Colors are clear, terrain is clear, writing is clear, roads and things like that all seem much clearer to me than some of the other AWE maps. And I don't know about errata. That's one thing I don't know how much map errata may exist for this. So that's something I'll have to look into, but hopefully not a lot, because map errata is always one of those things that's more difficult to fix. Certainly this, AWE is not going to have any sort of printable overlays to fix map errata the way some companies might do today. So anyway, there's a look at the full layout of both maps for the game. I don't know if you need both to play, if there's different scenarios in this or not. Obviously you need both to play the full campaign. Not sure if you only want to play a particular smaller scenario.